The name Final Fantasy is iconic as it is, well, ironic. Throughout the entire 40 years this game has been alive, this groundbreaking JRPG did so much in the way, and of course it was a lot more sparse back then. However, through these years, we've had so much where Final Fantasy is now a brand, legacy inspiring so much games and other franchises. But I guess why and how did this game become what it is today? I don't know, man. It's good. What do you want me to say? Hello everybody, today we're going to go over the original Final Fantasy. Now, originally released for the Nintendo Entertainment System in the 80s, we come into the first of many roadblocks on my quest to see, well, how good is this game and how does it hold up? Being the origin for one of the biggest RPG franchises, you bet your ass that there's a lot of versions. To prepare for this, I played every single version of Final Fantasy 1, except that I'm not psychotic. No, in reality, I most recently played the most recent and arguably the most accessible version, that being the Pixel Remaster, found on phones and pretty much any modern consoles. Well, I think we wasted more than enough time. Let's get into Final Fantasy, originally released for the NES back in 1987. Let's dive in. The name Final Fantasy has been debated, but confirmed by the series creator Hironobu Sakaguchi. It has multiple meanings. The final referring to the potential last game parent company Square may release before their bankruptcy, the last attempt for Sakaguchi to try make a game in the video game industry, and the fact that he couldn't go with his first choice of Fighting Fantasy. Fighting Fantasy being an RPG tabletop series created a few years back in 1982, not too dissimilar to D&D, which we see have heavy inspiration in Final Fantasy, as most RPGs do, coming from Dungeons & Dragons. Interviews with Sakaguchi state that any F word would have probably been fine in place of the fighting for Final. The team wanted the abbreviation from the start to be FF. A cool story when thinking about it, but funny how the actuality isn't as severe as some stories sometimes made it out to be, as a lot of people usually attribute the final part of Final Fantasy being a last-ditch effort to make a game, and making it seem a lot more high stakes. And yeah, I'll just get out of the way. I'm gonna insert a joke here about where the timeline where we have like fuck fantasy. I mean, $20 is probably already some sort of porn parody with that somewhere in the internet. I'm not gonna find it, nor am I gonna look it up. You do what you want with your own time, mate. Anyways, previously mentioning the D&D inspiration, we also see a big inspiration come from Dragon Quest, an RPG series that has about a year and a half head start from company Square as well. The series does more enough to stand apart, obviously, with its games. A lot of what we see the legendary Dragon Quest III pioneer, we see Final Fantasy I do, well, around 2 months prior. Of course, Dragon Quest is a series that gets its own highlight for me, as it's another series I really love dearly. Moving into gameplay, you start by picking 4 characters, giving them names, and slapping them into the world. You fight battles in a classic turn-based fashion, choosing an action for each character, and seeing the turn play out based off the stats like agility play into effect. Each of the 6 classes have their own attributes, and a very neat thing is that you are in full control of what class you pick, recognized as mainly jobs in Final Fantasy, right from the get-go. The 6 classes available to you are the Fighter, a well-rounded physical offensive type with good HP, attack, and defense. The Thief is, while less physically strong, it focuses more on agility, usually acting first. The Black Belt is just a purely offensive tank. The Black Mage focuses on offensive magic to deal magic damage to the enemies. White Mage does support and healing magic, and the Red Mage boasts a healthy balance of the 2 aforementioned classes, with some stats allocated in physical attack. It's honestly a good jack of all trades. Team composition is entirely your choice, even in the lineup. As the higher up you are, the more often enemies are out to sock you in the face. You can do the classic as I did, something quirky, do full magic or full offense, or hell, even white mages, all white mages. Dear God, what is wrong with you? Well, either way, in my opinion, this is a super unique and innovative way to start the game. It has so much options, and honestly, with this much level of replayability in the NES era, it's honestly pretty shocking. Well, other than that, gameplay is what you'd come to expect. Traversing dungeons, finding treasures, fight monster, level up, talk to NPCs in the town, shop till you drop in. I would go into detail, but anyone watching this probably has played a video game before. It's all here. The game itself sports a, well, decently sized overworld, especially for the time, slowly opening up as you progress. You'll get a boat early on, then a canoe allowing both river and ocean traversal with both vessels in the water, and then you finally get an airship, allowing near free reign to explore the world. It's amazing how much simply stuck in terms of game design, of course with modern tweaks and enhancements, right from the start. Moving into the more plot-focused section, you choose your party of 4. Once you're done, you are donned the Warriors of Light and sent out into the world. In my playthrough, we have Gorbel, he's our warrior. We have their thief, Trollope, White Mage Aleph, and of course last but not least, the Black Mage, Jay. He is the GOAT. Each of our lucky 4 gets a dark orb. Eventually revised in the crystals and later versions, they arrive at the castle town of Cornelia and immediately get hit with saving the recently abducted Princess Sarah. She was captured by traitorous Knight Garland for evil purposes. They dispatch Garland quickly, being recognized as warriors of a grand prophecy where they will save the dying world from the darkness. A standout moment takes place soon after defeating Garland. The team crosses the repaired bridge and shows a cinematic shot as the Warriors of Light are overlooking Castle Cornelia. The main theme of Final Fantasy plays and the text following appears. And so their quest began. As the 4 Warriors of Light, they felt overwhelmed by the great task destiny had placed before them. They did not even know the true significance of the 4 crystals they held in their hands. The crystals that once long ago held a light that shone brilliantly. The time for their journey had come. The time to cast off the veils of darkness and bring the world once more into light. Chills. Every time this happens. It's the super simple and effective way of starting this grand adventure off right. Perfection. Right here. The group heads out into the world to restore the crystals they all hold, each following one of the 4 main elements of fire, earth, water, and wind. We'll come to learn that a fiend holds back the power of each crystal in each resting place, initially sending the world into decay we are in. The wind died, the seas raged, fire spread over the wildlife, and the earth just fell to ruin. The warriors slowly restore each of the 4 elements and take out each corresponding fiend. As already stated, the team traverses the world in a very similar RPG fashion, talking to townspeople, hearing their trouble, and dealing with set issues. Dungeons are honestly all not too bad all around. Design-wise, it's nothing really special, the only puzzle being more of just maze-like design and a high rate of encounters. While most RPG veterans expect grinding, the high encounter rate can be exhausting here. Thank God for the remake sporting the auto battle function. If you know where you're going, dungeons can be pretty short and sweet. Just line each of the place. Many are trapped with forced monster battles, but are really never too difficult, unless, of course, caught off guard. Following through our story beats, the crew moves from Cornelia to Bravaka. We're beating up the local pirate problem thanks to a neat boat. Traveling across the inner seas takes us to the lands of Elfheim, where the crew helps wake the sleeping prince, who is under a curse. It is here that we have our first actual proper dungeon. It's called the Marsh Cave. And it fucking blows. Why, you may ask? Poison. Just poison. We get tricked by an evil dark elf and fight him. He initially casts a curse on the elf prince, and we reach out to a local sage for a way to cure him. When he awakes, we get a mystical key, allowing access to a bunch of new areas. After dealing with the elves' problem, it gains us past access to the inner sea by way of using dynamite to carve out new geography due to the local dwarves, where we get to the town of Melmond, in where the earth is suffering tremendously. The Cavern of Earth is here, and we unfortunately have to do the dungeon, well, technically 1.5 times, since you are led to believe that the vampire, the cavern's mid-boss, was the true scourge. No, it is in fact the Fiend of Earth, the Lich. Defeating him restores the Earth Crystal, and we move on to Crescent Lake. Here, a creepy cult of old men info dump on us, and we get the canoe. The canoe takes us to the volcano of Mount Glug. Here, the Fire Fiend Marilith awaits. We restore the Crystal of Fire and leave. Defeating the first 2 fiends, we eventually have to get an airship and move on to the northern part of the world. In the north, we find a side quest here where we traverse through a trial and present a token of courage to the King of Dragons, Bahamut. He blesses each character with a class upgrade, significantly boosting each class's abilities. For our 4, we have Aleph and Jay, simply better versions of the self, with White Wizard and Black Wizard respectively. Gorbel becomes a knight with many attributes boosted, but it gets a wide range to low-level white magic. Trollope gets to be a ninja who has similar physical boosts, including more armor to equip, but also has access to low-level black magic. While mainly focusing on DPS, these two classes can provide a solid backup if you ever need access to the magic. Especially Ninja, having two characters cast haste on the same turn, or having your Ninja do that while your Black Mage focuses on nuking the enemy, strategy starts to really expand here when you get this. Bouncing back to the main plot, we have our crew managing to get to the sunken shrine, where the Kraken and the Fiend of Water lurks. We save the mermaids from Mr. Tentacle Man, and restore the water crystal. We need to find a way to the last fiend, supposedly in the sky. There's a lot of steps involved here, such as finding a robot who gives us a special cue behind a waterfall, having some scholar teach us an ancient language to speak with the local race of Lufenians, and scaling a tower in the middle of a desert. Finally, we get to the Flying Fortress, the old crib of the Lufenians. Tiamat, the Fiend of Wind, is here, and we crush her all the same. While in the sky, we see an observation point that shows all 4 crystals, converging their light to one point, being over the Chaos Shrine, our initial dungeon where we fought Garland. We head back there and destroy a black crystal, showing us a portal to the Chaos Shrine again. In reality, this is the Chaos Shrine 2,000 years in the past. We descend the shrine, refighting each of the fiends. Finally, we encounter Garland again at the very end. We did not actually defeat Garland. Instead, before Garland dies, the fiends sent him back in time, allowing him to live in the Chaos Shrine in the past. The 4 fiends were sent to the future by Garland, now evil being known as Chaos. He creates a time loop for the squad to continuously live forever in. Of course, our crew stops it, with Gorbel's bravery and strength, Trollope's quick wits and speed, Aelif's grace, protection, and care, and Jay using the power of the sun to scorch his enemies alive. The crew finally puts a stop to the evil being now known as Chaos. Garland/Chaos is defeated, breaking the time loop, and the game ends after a text scroll. The warriors return, but no one knows who or what they did. Only their deeds will live on in legend, and does end the first of the Final Fantasy games. A very fine story, and one that was most likely a super cool experience for its time. While I can't say much on the story, it checks all the fantasy RPG boxes and delivers a completely suitable story for its time. It is no wonder why the series became so popular and beloved. Looking at the game objectively, I can definitely feel that it's sometimes a tad confusing on where to go. There is a lot of back and forth that needs to be done, and missing a small text box could lead to a lot of confusion. A confusing part for me was one of the first times playing when we had to learn Lufenian language. You need a slab, dubbed the Rosetta Stone, found in the sunken shrine. The thing is, it is opposite of the way to the Kraken, having you go higher in the shrine as opposed to lower, where our destination lies. It's possible that many have missed it, with only hints from characters pointing to it being there. And to top it off, you have to remember some random NPC in Melmond who mentioned that he was smart or something like that if you talked to him even in the first place. It is by far not the most cryptic or confusing thing that an NES game made you do, but it still sometimes can be confusing. Now, of course, I'm sure a lot of that was intentional by the developers. A lot of these early game RPGs seem to have that type of talk to the NPCs, get a feel for everything, probably even take notes on yourself with dungeons and all that stuff. So I can't really judge the game too harshly, and honestly, it probably did reduce the risk of grinding a lot of the time because you were out exploring, kind of getting lost. That's the whole point of the game, I'm sure. But obviously playing in the now more modern day where a lot of things are more accessible, sometimes you just want to breeze through it, so that's kind of where I stand. In terms of things that definitely can be not aging super great is the encounter rate being annoyingly high at times. A lot of dungeons just feel like it's constantly battling, and then the layout is actually not that long. In early versions, not having much access to saving aside from the overworld make many defeats annoying, especially in the goddamn marsh cave. That could be super frustrating. Later editions did fix this, like I said, so if you die, it usually would autosave you to like the last floor big room you've entered, so there is that, I'll definitely say. So some of the setback is not super crazy, but trust me, it will not be the last time I'd be complaining about long dungeons in Final Fantasy. So I think the replayability is honestly super great here. It has something that has aged really well. The 6 classes only gifting an admittedly small range of viable classes for a varied team composition, I do love it a lot. Not all classes are very balanced though. The White Mage only gets access to party heals, the Red Mage and Knight only get really shafted because they only get single target healing, so that can definitely sway your opinion if you're trying to pick a dedicated healer. Thieves don't get quite as many quirks as they will do later on. Stuff like guaranteed fleeing battle, trap disarming, or even lockpicking, none of that's here. I mean, all the classes really don't have those perks that a lot of newer games give, so there is that. And honestly, the Monk I think is just simply kind of bad. It just doesn't have any customizable options. It is just one of the weakest classes here. There isn't really much to it. It's pretty boring. Battle system is great here. It's pretty much the basic of basic for a JRPG standard, but there is a reason why it is the basic, and it's still used as the core foundation for most RPGs. It just simply works. I love this classic styles of battles, and paired with the amazing music, I can't say I stay upset at the encounters for long, even if it is extremely high encounter rates. The music is fantastic, battle theme aside. I love most of the music here. The battle theme, of course, is iconic, paired with the intro bass line that stays familiar in many subsequent games. The victory theme being in nearly every Final Fantasy game since this. Gotta love when the music sticks to landing right out the gate too. Video game music is great, and the great Nobuo Uematsu will continue to assist with the score of many games, including Final Fantasy to this very present. He just is a core foundation of this game, and it would be very undutiful of me if I didn't represent him. The music is definitely a standout, it's super iconic, and it continues to stay that way. All future versions do honestly a great job at buffing the initial game's quality without taking away what made the score great in the first place. Speaking of the different versions, I really think it's time we probably address that part. So, releases. The last question is it worth playing now? Well, simply put, yes. There are so many opportunities for you to play it, with all of its re-releases. I mean, we have the original NES cartridge, don't forget the Origin collection on the PlayStation 1 with updated graphics and FMV sequences. Dawn of Souls for the Game Boy Advance is a pretty cool option, features both 1 and 2, as a few new added dungeons. The PSP released for the PSP, of course, featured the base from Dawn of Souls and upgraded even more features and more dungeons and more bosses. Don't forget the phone, the Virtual Console over the years, or other shops to buy it on. The NES Classic Edition holds the NES version with the features of Virtual Consoles in tow. And finally, of course, the Pixel Remaster, enhanced 2D visuals, sound, the quality of life found on pretty much every modern platform. I mean, you have so many options of the game. It has been released more times than I've heard my parents say. I'm proud of you, Josh. My personal recommendation for what remaster you should go for, or what version, should be the Pixel Remaster, due to the ease of access and the cheap price on the digital storefront. All the quality of life, like the auto running, there's built-in maps that shows you even where the treasure chests are, the auto saves, all that stuff is super crisp. But of course the GBA or PSP versions are also great and have a boatload of extra dungeons and bosses, if that suits you. Many of the fights you encounter in these dungeons are classic Final Fantasy bosses, usually found from games 3 through 6, as well as extra dungeons that are admittedly frustrating and a little bit tedious. In my opinion, it's cool, it's a fun addition, and all the optional loot challenges might be worth it to some. It's completely optional, so go with those if that's what your heart wants, but the Pixel Remaster is probably still my personal best choice to go with. And really, that's all about it. Final Fantasy I is great. While many of its issues are typically a product of its time, I can't stress how the team at Square really nailed it. A lot of the aspects just stuck with it round one. Many classic designs, verbiage, and whatnot debuted here, and provided an accessible but fair challenge for the most part, because Marsh Cave exists, so I can't say it's entirely perfect. Did I tell you I hate Marsh Cave? I really, really, really do. The legacy of Final Fantasy I cannot be overstated. It's legendary for a reason. Any RPG fan who hasn't played it yet simply should. It starts an incredible series that I will be continuing to delve into. And what better way to start than the original Final Fantasy I, the game that, simply put, started it all.